This video was originally recorded on December 28th. Things clearly have changed a lot, especially with the events that happened on January 6th in Washington, D.C. I recorded several minutes and placed them at the end of this video. The rest of the video is as it was originally recorded, and I hope the conclusion will tie it together in a way that makes sense.
The world is weird and makes me mad, but at least I get to talk about it with Jose.
When someone tunes into a news commentary channel, they're expecting two different things: to learn about the news of the day and be provided with a context in which to understand it. This is the basis for most YouTube channels that comment on the news. They're all structured the same way, with a brief rundown of the story and then some analysis. Depending on the political leanings of the channel, you can get news from whatever point on the political spectrum you might be interested in hearing from. And correspondingly, their choice of stories and how they're presented will reflect that worldview. It's true of every political YouTube channel, this one included. You're never getting the capital T truth about anything. Rather, you're getting the perspective of the person speaking. Which brings us to Tim Pool. Across his 3 YouTube channels, he publishes multiple videos daily. This can mean he uploads 6 or 7 different videos from 10 to 30 minutes in length on his main 2 channels, Tim Pool and Timcast, and videos that can stretch on for 4 hours on his Timcast IRL channel. Tim Pool's main 2 channels focus exclusively on his own perspective on the news of the day, and his perspective provides his audience with a selection of news stories and analysis that makes them less informed after having watched one or more of his videos. Here's a quick example. Back in mid-November, the United States was seeing another surge in COVID infections. Now imagine you're someone who goes to Tim's channel looking for the latest update on COVID. On November 17th, 2020, you would find a video titled, "Stores Stripped as COVID Lockdown Sparks Panic. Tucker Carlson warns of the Great Reset." The main thrust of this video is some commentary about how the threat of COVID is overblown, tests may not be trustworthy, and that there's some kind of nefarious plot with the elites trying to reshape society. Here's how Tim breaks down the increasing number of COVID cases.
Number of U.S. deaths per day has not spiked. Look at where it was early on. And now it's actually, there's a spike right here. It's a little spike. It's going up, and we're worried about that. And I can understand saying we need to take precautions to prevent this spike from skyrocketing. But take a look at cases. Number of new infections per day is higher than it's ever been, but the death rate is way, way, way down. I'm not convinced we're facing extreme circumstances just yet. It makes no sense to destroy the lives of so many people.
The number of cases are going up, but since deaths remain low, Tim says the danger is being overblown. He repeated this in a November 18th video titled, "Protests over forced vaccinations erupt. Democrats openly violate lockdown. Dark winter is coming." That's really ominous.
Right now, the fact we can point out is that hospitalizations are not going up and deaths are only spiked a little bit, not as bad as it was. It went up and then it went back down.
Now let's compare this to some commentary from another commentator, Sam Cedar, in a video a few days prior, November 13th, titled, "Sam breaks down the startling new COVID numbers."
Hospitalizations and deaths are lagging indicators. So what's going on today in terms of infections is going to implicate hospitalizations 2 to 3 weeks from now. It's going to be a really tragic lesson for tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. This is not to mention, the implications, long-term implications for a lot of people of getting COVID. It is, we're just watching this slow motion tragedy.
A very different prognosis. What Tim sees as alarmism orchestrated by a group of elites to enact their agenda, Sam presents as a real danger that will lead to higher death rates in the near future. With the benefit of hindsight, we can very easily see who got this one right. Throughout December, deaths have been skyrocketing in the United States, with reports now regularly reaching over 3,000 a day. And this isn't a case of a commentator having psychic powers. It's been well known for a while that, when it comes to indicators on the severity of the COVID crisis, deaths are a lagging indicator, typically lagging behind infections. That's because after being diagnosed with COVID, people usually have 2 weeks before the symptoms get serious. So if there's an increase in the number of cases being reported, a spike in the number of deaths is likely to occur a few weeks later. The fact that Tim looked at both number of infections and number of deaths on the same day without mentioning this fact, and if anything providing commentary that ran contrary to the idea that a big spike was coming, left his audience misinformed about the danger of COVID-19. This is one small example of how Tim keeps his audience ignorant. In a look at the sources used by Tim Pool from a sample of his videos in 2020, the numbers reveal that the vast majority of Tim Pool's sources are right-wing, accounting for 59% of the sources he uses in his videos. But even more than that, Tim's attitudes towards the media sources he presents reveals even more about his commentary. Here's an example of how Tim speaks about the mainstream media.
The mainstream media has been lying to them and covering up these stories. They don't get it. How insane is it?
When he speaks about right-wing media, his tone quickly shifts. For example, here are some comments he made about right-wing populist Tucker Carlson.
Tucker Carlson has once again saved the world. Yes, I'm being a bit tongue-in-cheek, but to a certain extent, you could say Tucker Carlson literally saved the world.
Wow, okay. This reveals a very clear bias towards right-wing media, one that colors Tim's commentary, giving it a distinctly right-wing slant. He'll accuse the far-left media, at least in his mind, of taking every opportunity to advance its agenda, whereas Tucker Carlson, who is, at the very least, also pushing an agenda, is some kind of savior. When you take that into consideration, it's not surprising that most of the news stories he presents come from a right-wing perspective. This reliance on right-wing media has led Tim to advance some questionable right-wing narratives, most recently pushing the idea that Donald Trump has a chance of retaining his presidency. In the days following the November 3rd, 2020 federal election, it became increasingly clear that Joe Biden would be declared the next president-elect. There's a fun supercut of all the times Tim Pool predicted a landslide victory for Republicans in that very election.
No amount of mail-in ballots will matter. If Trump gets 537 or 36 or even 538 every single electoral vote, we all know Joe Biden will lose. Like, let's be real, man. As I've stated 1,000,001 times, Donald Trump's going to win. The Republicans are going to sweep. Ladies and gentlemen, Joe Biden has defeated Donald Trump. Everything I've told you will be wrong and completely meaningless. So keep that in mind.
Since then, Tim has argued that he was only presenting a hypothetical based on a story he read, and that he didn't think this was a likely outcome.
In the astronomical event that Donald Trump somehow pulls off a triple hat trick in these states, I'm going to play that crab dancing song back at you. Although it's not really what I meant back in the day. But, several months ago when I was like, I think this will lend itself to a Donald Trump landslide victory.
As a reminder, he had made this prediction many, many times, and certainly within 2 months before the election.
I'll tell you what I think is going to happen. I think they're cheating. I think Trump's going to landslide. I think Trump would have had a landslide no matter what. I think the polls are fake. And I think what's happening now is Trump's going to win, and they're going to say, but he didn't really win.
Now that we've seen those fun clips, let's talk about coping. While some people are very happy to point out that Tim is coping over being wrong in his predictions, this is missing the more important part of what's going on with Tim's channel. His viewers don't turn in to watch him get high on copium, they're going there for a fix themselves. You see, Tim isn't a user, he's a copium dealer. Here's what I mean. Although a Biden victory was increasingly obvious following the days of the election as the votes were counted and he had a clear lead, you wouldn't know it looking at the titles of many of Tim Pool's videos. They read, Wisconsin lawmaker says electoral college should reject results, paving way for Trump win. Major victory for GOP. Judge rules mail-in voting likely unconstitutional. Trump may win or block. PA. Leftists and Democrats start panicking as they realize Trump is actually winning political victories. These headlines are dripping with a Trump-flavored sweat, beckoning any of his supporters for a quick taste of this delicious copium, with the promise that things are swinging in Trump's favor, that hope still lives on. When it comes to the actual contents of these videos, I would be misrepresenting them if I didn't mention that Tim believes that these various efforts to win Trump the presidency are long shots. He certainly does say that quite a bit, but there's always a but.
I don't think it's very likely that Trump pulls this off. I really, really don't. But he's trying. And his argument seems to make sense. Joe Biden is gonna win this one, but this is where it gets crazy. So it may seem astronomical that Trump actually succeeds, but he's gaining ground in every place he needs to gain ground. That's the best way to put it. I've said over and over again that it seems that the likelihood that Trump actually pulls off some victory here is astronomical, but possible.
And Tim was constantly pushing back when it would be clear that Joe Biden could be safely declared the president-elect. At first, he was saying it was December 14th when the Electoral College voted.
Until we get to this point where we have certified results on the 14th
Then it was January 6th when the results are tabulated by the vice president.
The vice president becomes president-elect, as far as I can tell, on January 6th. I was wrong before. I thought it was the 14th.
And then January 20th, the date of inauguration itself.
The only date that matters is January 20th, as per the Constitution.
The impression this creates in the minds of his viewers is that there might be something to this whole Trump comeback. That there's a chance it could work. Even though Tim personally doesn't believe it, he's always quick to mention his opinion doesn't really matter.
But it doesn't matter what I think, as I often say.
Tim believes it's his job to deliver the news and let his audience make of it what they will.
People want to say Trump is going to lose. Fine, that's for them. That's not what I do. Okay, I try to be rational, reasonable, understand what's happening, and tell you.
But it's the news he's choosing to deliver that matters. Dozens of his videos were devoted to every morsel of a chance he could spot of Donald Trump overturning the results of the election, something that any Trump fan would be desperate to hear. Part of delivering the copium means not just choosing the right sources or spectacles, but also choosing the right stories, the ones that will keep his audience hopeful and keep them watching. It isn't surprising to find dozens of comments under his videos from desperate Trump fans. Here are a few examples. As a non-American, I have to say Americans should never back down. The future of the world and freedom depend on Trump's winning. We don't care about mass riots, we care about getting it right and not turning into China. Trump won PA by a landslide, it's clear. Democrats' sloppy cheating is so obvious. It's legitimately disgusting and only proves we live in a banana republic. And Tim reinforces the actions of Trump supporters at every turn.
If you're a Trump supporter, you probably believe he's going to do it. While the left is saying Trump will lose and the right is saying Trump will win, there's rational, moderate people saying, like, Trump might win, okay?
And that's how you make the copium. Tim himself acknowledges how remote the chances are, but by fixating on every minor development and its implications, he keeps hope alive in Trump supporters, all the while hiding behind the idea that he's only talking about something possible, not necessarily something probable. But when he says that, he isn't doing it to inform his audience of the realistic possibilities. He's doing that to protect his own credibility. If he was providing adequate commentary for these stories, he would be highlighting how incredibly remote and absurd it is to think that these will actually happen. All of these stories are nonsense, and while I could claim the benefit of hindsight saying they wouldn't work out, even at the time these were absurd long shots. And to just pump out video after video presenting them as the next big chance or a possible opportunity for a change in the outcome of the election, even with the little disclaimers, simply isn't giving his audience an accurate depiction of what's happening in the world. It's only giving them false hope. The reaction from his audience makes it clear that anyone tuning into these videos is doing so to hear about how Trump might still get a second term in 2021. And just to nail this point home a little bit harder, I want to highlight the short saga of the Texas lawsuit, which would supposedly overturn the results in several states Trump had lost during the election. Tim got on the ground floor with this story before it had been thoroughly undermined by the mainstream media. On Twitter, Tim expressed patience on this revelation, claiming that before making any statements on this new case, we should wait and see how the Supreme Court ruled on it. That same day, he released a video titled, "Texas Just Nuked Democrats from Orbit with SCOTUS Lawsuit Calling Election Unconstitutional." Because Tim was lurking late at night, this video came out early in the life cycle of this story, before the mainstream media had torn this story to pieces. And blissfully ignorant of the real possibilities of this working out, they were actually really low, Tim is breathless in describing it.
They're probably going to win this one, and this is huge. This is going to change the outcome of the election. In my opinion, we'll see.
A few days later, though, when the Supreme Court dismissed the case, Tim takes a different tone in the video. Texas GOP calls for new union of states as SCOTUS denies lawsuit disputing election. It's not over.
I'll tell you, it is not over until Joe Biden is in the White House, and even then, it might not end. They don't get it. They don't understand what's happening.
Tim went out on a limb for this story, and he got burnt. It ended up going nowhere and doing nothing, like every attempt Trump and his team have made to change the results of the election. But Tim can't have his audience walking away from his videos feeling dejected and defeated, and so he pushes the deadline of when things will be over to never. Things will never be over. Trump supporters will never accept this election, and soon we're going to have a civil war. Tim's role as copium dealer should be understood as broadly anti-left and specifically pro-Trump. That is to say, he's more likely to produce content that attacks left-wing social views and politicians, and more likely to defend right-wing ones as they relate specifically to Donald Trump. That isn't to say he never does the opposite of either of those things, it's just highly unlikely he'll either title a video or spend most of his time praising the left or criticizing Donald Trump. What's quite striking is how protective he is of Trump in general, especially the critiques that come from the left. Some of the better examples of this are in the Timcast IRL channel, where he has informal conversations with guests, and happened to invite individuals who were to the left of him. In the first case, on October 27th, 2020, Tim spoke with YouTube political streaming personality Vaush when speaking about Trump's response to the COVID pandemic. Tim has a very strange defense of Trump's response.
We know Trump was given information and then lied about it.
And that's and your opinion is...
That's not an opinion.
Yes. No. I'm saying, and your opinion is he shouldn't have, and mine is, I don't know, maybe there would have been a panic, maybe there wouldn't.
I can't help but think Tim's feelings on government officials lying to the American public has changed since this video came out. Here's an example from a video less than 3 months later.
Anthony Fauci says, don't worry, we can accomplish herd immunity, and then he keeps moving the goalposts, so he's lying the whole time. That's authoritarianism. The idea that you're too stupid as an individual, that your rights don't matter, and that we should withhold information from you because we're smarter than you.
Tim hates lying now. Or maybe it's only when someone other than Trump is doing it. And for the record, Fauci's reason for changing the required herd immunity projection was new scientific information, and his message is being tailored to encourage as many Americans as possible to take the vaccine. It's a lot more complicated than branding Fauci a liar. Anyway, let's get back to the conversation with Vaush.
What I'm trying to talk about is the totality of evidence that he's mishandled this pandemic, and it's interesting to me that you were extremely unwilling to criticize him for that.
Because what's the alternative?
The alternative...
What would have happened in any other circumstance where we have no control group? What am I supposed to say?
So,
well, if
wait,
Trump
how many would have
backflipped,
how
he
many
saved a life.
how many would have had to have died before you would criticize him?
I don't know.
Give me
We
a
don't
number.
know.
Wait, so you could have let 1 million?
So what you're telling me is that we have no idea what would have happened if Trump did anything else.
We don't
and now
ever.
We're supposed
We
to
don't.
make a determination.
That's
The idea that you can't criticize the Trump administration response because we don't know for certain what the outcomes of other courses of actions would be deflates literally any criticism someone can have for a past action. And when Tim is confronted on this point, his response is to point out how he hasn't criticized Nancy Pelosi.
You are taking the choice to defend Trump. You are the partisan here. You're not a distanced anti-authoritarian. You are standing with him, and you are saying, yes, I am anti-authoritarian, I am anti-establishment, but also, we don't know if him lying to the American people was bad. It could have caused a panic.
So
Wait,
should I
hold
make
on.
a video right now where I just scream about Nancy Pelosi causing all of the problems? I haven't done that.
Although still strange, the idea that he's not trying to attack either side for the pandemic response, this would be a consistent line of reasoning if we hadn't heard Tim say this a few minutes earlier.
We had several governors praise Trump for his response in, I think it was May. Look.
A quarter of the deaths from COVID worldwide in a country with 4%.
Nursing homes where the governors of Democrat-controlled states put sick people, killing.
That's not, wait, again, that's not good. I feel like we're engaging in whataboutism right now.
We see that Tim is quite willing to blame Democrats when it comes to defending the Trump administration. But whenever Vaush had criticisms for the Democrats throughout the stream, Tim never felt the urge to balance out those with a critique of Trump, or praising the Democrats in any way, shape, or form. To be fair, in this conversation, Tim lets criticism of Trump get some air and offers a few himself.
I think Trump has very serious problems. I think he lies often. I think he's a blackguard. He boasts. He won't shut up. And I think most people know he's got a mouth that he couldn't stop blabbing to save his own campaign. Mm-hmm. I think he caused a lot of his own problems. And there is an actual really great argument that he should have been honest with the American people.
On the hours upon hours of Tim Pool content I watched to research this video, that clip was the hardest I saw him go on Donald Trump. We can see this behavior again in the conversation with another political streaming personality, Destiny, on December 3rd of the same year.
In Bolivia, when he kept trying to recognize...
Democrats did that too.
Regardless.
These conversations are especially revelatory as we see Tim is often unable to counter the arguments put against him without digging into a Rolodex of anecdotes he seems to have, citing fringe stories and personal experiences, counting on the fact that his guest either hasn't heard of those stories or doesn't have personal experiences that run contrary to his. It's very difficult to present academic research, statistics, or other facts to only hear them countered by some strange anecdote you know few details of and are only hearing from a single source. And this is where Tim feels most comfortable, not only in these discussions, but all his videos thrive on this specific presentation of reoccurring oddball stories he repeats endlessly. And we can see what happens when one of Tim's faulty claims is checked in real time.
He even said, we want to pressure you so that you can make memories. And did you remember when he said that, right? He said, we want you to, when we pressure you this way, then you can form memories.
I'm pretty sure exactly what he said was that when we pressure you, you're more likely to remember what actually happened, is what he said. That under some pressure, the truth will come out or whatever it was.
Ultimately, I think the argument's kind of pointless on this one guy.
Sure.
He moves on instantly. And before moving on myself, there's one comment I can't leave alone from these conversations.
I was told, in a matter of speaking, to lie on more than one occasion. That if there is a certain bit of news reporting that's true, but would be offensive to our audience, we don't report it. We side with the audience. That's what I was told to do.
Can you give me like not a specific example, but like what's like a general example of that? What do you mean by that?
Let's say there's two guys in the street, Proud Boy and Antifa. And Antifa walks up and punches the Proud Boy in the face. If I reported that Antifa punched a Proud Boy in the face, it would be offensive to our audience. We don't report it. We have to side with the audience, which means when the Proud Boy got back up and punched Antifa back, that's what we report.
To hear this criticism from Tim, who so fiercely sides with his own audience and their absolute love of Trump, is ridiculous. Not that Tim acknowledges the pro-Trump elements in his audience, as we can see here.
With this audience, I notice, I don't want to be too general, but when I start to dump on Trump, if I just start to insult him, people get really angry at the other stuff I say in the conversation. If I don't trash Trump,
I don't think that's true.
I've noticed a trend, because a lot of people that watch this show seem to love him.
Well, you're looking at the comments.
I look at the comments.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the text comments.
Yep, that's why a lot of the comments are making fun of me quite a bit as well, especially now.
The idea that comments under his videos, highly voted up ones no less, are somehow not representative of his audience is ridiculous. His claim of controversy driving their popularity is misleading. Upvotes are clearly signaling a side is being taken. Although Tim has apparently conducted some kind of opinion poll, I suspect many in his audience who claim to be on the left or the center probably voted for Trump, the right-wing candidate, in the federal election, just like the supposedly left-wing Tim Pool, who also voted for Trump. And all of this brings me to the reason I wanted to make this video in the first place. I got a bit annoyed when I saw Tim Pool starting to produce videos that promote vaccine skepticism. Let's get one thing out of the way right off the bat. It would be wrong to call Tim an anti-vaxxer, and he quite clearly states he thinks there's probably nothing wrong with taking any vaccine for the COVID-19 virus. But, and if you were paying attention in this video, you knew there would be a but, Tim is quite willing to play into the paranoia around the vaccine, including using techniques that are common among anti-vaxxers. In the December 17th, 2020 video titled "Viral Video Shows Nurse Vaccination Syringe Was Empty, Media Is the Cause of Vaccine Fear-Mongering."
I think the mainstream media, these news outlets are trying to freak us out about the vaccine. I mean it.
Tim is supposedly calling out the media for creating skepticism about the vaccine. Ironically, this is something he does in this very video.
Look, you have these PR events or whatever. We don't need them. It's the weirdest thing to me. We have flu shots every year. You tell people there's the flu shot, have at it, we don't care.
The fact that Tim compares this to getting the flu shot as if millions of people haven't had their lives completely changed by this pandemic demonstrates how he really likes to downplay the impact this virus is having. It's sort of true whenever he talks about the pandemic. He never mentions that the virus itself is dangerous. He mostly gets angry at lockdowns or dancing nurses.
I look at that and I get angry.
The first bit of evidence Tim shows us is a news story from El Paso about a local news report showing a nurse receiving the vaccine. But it appears the syringe's plunger had already been pushed in. An event that, by the way, had 5 different people receive the vaccine. Why this story is getting any kind of coverage is kind of weird. There are hundreds of these stories out there, especially on local news channels. They want to present some positive developments on this year-long pandemic. This non-story got traction because it was spread on social media as suspect. Even if the event had been botched, this speaks less to the efficacy of the vaccine and more to the people who set up this event.
The dude literally did not receive a vaccine. I'm casting the PR event in a negative light.
Oh hey, Tim got this one right, and he wants to assure people that the vaccine is fine. But there's always a but, isn't there? This is the illusion of nuance Tim loves to introduce to his audience.
But there can be side effects. That's a fact. And you really should understand
Here's an example of him providing supposedly reasonable concerns about the vaccine.
There have been people who developed Bell's palsy after getting the vaccine. They're saying, but it's not any different than the natural, statistics on people getting Bell's palsy. The issue is there's still the correlation.
There is no issue, though. Of the 43,000 people who received the Pfizer vaccine, 4 developed Bell's palsy. And of the 30,000 in the Moderna group, 3 reported some degree of facial paralysis, a symptom of Bell's palsy. The standard rate of developing some kind of partial facial paralysis within the United States is 1 in 10,000. In other words, when Tim says there's a correlation between receiving the vaccine and developing Bell's palsy, that isn't true. A correlation would require the incidence of partial facial paralysis to go up after receiving the vaccine, but since it stays the same, there is no evidence of a correlation. But I'm not a medical expert. My basic understanding of math aside, let's see what a medical expert says. Here's a quote from Dr. Irene Kim, assistant professor of head and neck surgery and director of the Facial Nerve Center in the Division of Facial Plastic Surgery at UCLA, who echoes the FDA when she says, "The information we have is insufficient to say that there is a causal relationship between Bell's palsy and the vaccine." Back to Tim's video, he overstates another side effect when talking about anaphylaxis.
I believe anaphylaxis was I think it was 0.685% probability. So that's like 1 in 160 or so.
I'm not sure where he got this specific figure from. When he tweeted about this, he included a link to a Euronews article, though the 0.685% number is nowhere to be found. I suspect Tim is getting this rate of 0.685% from the Pfizer study, in which 0.63% of the 22,000 people who received the vaccine reported hypersensitivity-related adverse effects, compared to the 0.51% who received the placebo. Most importantly, Pfizer said there were no cases of anaphylaxis. And to clarify what anaphylaxis is, one definition I found describes it as a serious, life-threatening allergic reaction. This is the most serious type of allergic reaction a person can get, and if you don't have an EpiPen or something nearby, you can quite easily die. Tim's saying that 1 in 160 people who get the vaccine will get anaphylaxis is completely absurd and dangerously misleading.
Why can't we have a regular conversation about this? There are side effects. It shouldn't be mandatory. How simple is that?
Although Tim calls himself pro-vaccine, overstating the side effects of vaccines is a common tactic of anti-vaxxers. Though the bigger point he makes in this video is a libertarian-esque rant about how important it is to have the choice on whether or not to receive the vaccine, which is the real point of this video, so he can say this.
Why is it that for years we can have people say things like, I can't remember who it was, there was some celebrity lady, and she said, not in any way anti-vax, just think people should have a choice as to whether or not that, they get vaccinated, and they called her an anti-vaxxer.
The funny thing about this freedom argument is that it's one that's been used by anti-vaxxers going back over 100 years. Here's an image from a pamphlet from 1885 talking about the supposed dangers of the smallpox vaccine. You can see this echoed today with fear-mongering about Bill Gates using vaccines to usher in a new world order, and that mandatory vaccines to have access to public services, like public schools, is taking away people's freedoms. Tim's paranoia here is of the more mild sort, where he fears every small business will be shut down and people will be forced to get vaccinations to shop at Walmart, something that seems unlikely. He also talks about how he thinks people should have the choice to homeschool their kids, which, last I checked, wasn't being outlawed in the United States. And that's Tim's content all over. He presents a reasonable take on vaccine, but pairs it with some subtle fear-mongering, all the while taking pot shots at the media. Here's an example of how he projects anti-vax talking points into the mouths of media figures.
This dude goes on TV and says probably one of the stupidest things I think anyone could have even said. You know what? But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's just being honest. He said something to the effect of, even if you get the vaccine, you can still get COVID. You can still get infected and you can still spread it. So you got to wear your mask. You can't travel. It's a misconception. Wait, what? Is this serious?
Tim refuses to do even the most basic research on what the vaccine does. The function of this vaccine is to prevent the most serious symptoms of COVID, symptoms that have killed hundreds of thousands of people around the world. What's unknown is how effective, if at all, it will be in reducing the transmission of the virus. So until herd immunity is reached, it's important to maintain social distancing, mask wearing, and limited travel. This is not the same as saying the vaccine doesn't work at all. But instead of doing research to clarify this Twitter comment, Tim would sooner pretend someone in the media is saying the vaccine just doesn't work, which gives him the perfect excuse to say this.
So many people thought it was impossible. Guess what? Maybe it was. Maybe this is the trial. Like, we're desperate. We got a lockdown. People are scared. Not conservatives, but the left. And so they brushed this out. And it's as simple as that.
This is not the nuanced perspective about the vaccine it pretends to be. It certainly isn't full-on anti-vax content, the same way his pro-Trump videos aren't full-on MAGA content. It's a slightly more nuanced and restrained take, but ultimately it's pushing his audience in the same direction, to be more skeptical of the vaccine and to be more supportive of Trump. One of the most reasonable things Tim says in this video is that people should trust their doctors, advice I wholeheartedly support. Does Tim ever wonder why he has highly upvoted comments like these under his video? Not getting vaccine. I'm not anti-vax. I'm just not interested in being a guinea pig. 10 years from now, there will be ads on TV. Did you get COVID vaccine? Join class action lawsuit today. Don't you trust your doctors? No. 99.9% survival rate versus 2% severe side effects with a 95% efficacy rate? You decide which odds you're willing to take. If this video was intended to reduce people's fear of the vaccine, it obviously isn't working. If anything, it's having the exact opposite effect. And the cherry on top is how he turns this video into another chance to defend Donald Trump.
I think these news outlets really want to undermine our faith in the vaccine. And a lot of people think the vaccine isn't safe. But I'll tell you what, you want to know why I think they like doing this? They hate Donald Trump. Warp speed was Trump's initiative. It worked. The vaccine came out. Everyone's happy about it.
Because it wouldn't be a Tim Pool video without another hit of that pro-Trump copium. Taken on their own, very few single Tim Pool videos are especially bad. And what Tim's prolific amount of videos create a media environment for his viewers that keeps them happy. And Tim has a tendency to speak out of both sides of his mouth to the point of parody.
Far be it from me to question an actual legal expert on this, for sure.
10 seconds later.
But I have to question what he's saying.
And a clip like that encapsulates one of the many problems with Tim Pool's content. He speaks on topics he knows very little about, and the things he knows he often misrepresents. Tim Pool's videos make his audience more ignorant about the world. This isn't my first Tim Pool video. I focused on him specifically in 3 other videos on this channel and mentioned him in passing a few other times. In my previous videos, one of the major failures I think I had was not taking the time to also discuss how deeply unimportant he is as a person. While the comments making fun of his hat, his manner of speaking, and his intelligence might be fun for a laugh, and I've probably had a few laughs at the guy's expense in this very video, I think it's important to stress that if Tim decided that tomorrow he would stop making videos and retire to the wilderness, this would not be the end of terrible news analysis on YouTube. Another person would rise to fill the beanie, and YouTube has no shortage of loudmouth commentators ready to spoon-feed their audience trash and tell them it's news, and this is true across the political spectrum. What I hope this video does is highlight some of the techniques to watch out for. The repeated use of sources from one side of the political spectrum, the embarrassingly wrong predictions, and the absolute refusal to criticize certain politicians. There's no easy way to spot these people, but here are a few tips I found personally helpful. If a single person or small team are producing huge volumes of content, commenting on a wide number of issues, the odds are good that they don't know nearly enough to be covering such a wide array of topics. If someone says they're giving you news right down the middle and their comment section is filled with partisans for one political side, the news you're getting probably isn't neutral. Don't let someone extrapolate anecdotes into broader social trends. Demand numbers or research before believing anyone who makes comments about entire nations or groups of people. And be wary of small anecdotes and stories that can't be falsified. If someone tells you a story from their personal experience or an obscure news event that may have only been covered by a few sources, be very wary of anything they tell you next, because often there's no way to fact check any of these stories. This person could just as easily make up anything that some random friend told them, or use a one-off event that isn't representative of anything. They may not even be doing this to deceive you. It could just be a simple misunderstanding of how the news works. You can't understand the world at large by talking to your buddy down the street. You actually have to do some work. And if you're the sort of person who has some time, try fact-checking a few random videos. If someone can be shown to be consistently wrong, they're probably not worth listening to. And credits roll, end of YouTube video. Or that was the plan before an angry mob of Trump supporters broke into the US Capitol to stop the counting of Electoral College votes. Details are still hazy so early into this event, but this video would be incomplete if I didn't make a few connections here. To describe the events as neutrally as I can, President Trump staged a rally in Washington, D.C. on January 6th, making his case to his supporters that the recent federal election was illegitimate. This follows 2 months of claiming the election has been illegitimate.
We're going to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue. I love Pennsylvania Avenue. And we're going to the Capitol.
Following the speech, his supporters marched on the Capitol building where the certified election results were being counted. Security at the building was quickly bypassed, and there were several acts of vandalism and theft. The counting of the results was halted, elected officials were escorted to safety, and eventually several arrests were made. Eventually the building was cleared, the counting of the votes was resumed, and Joe Biden was declared the president-elect. These are the events that occurred, but what's really important is how people consume commentary about them, which will affect how we understand them in a broader context. I spent a lot of time in this video talking about Tim Pool, but he's just a case study for a much larger problem. There's a right-wing echo chamber that reaches all the way from the lowliest of grifters to the highest offices around the world. For example, when Representative Matt Gaetz said this,
"And I don't know if the reports are true, but the Washington Times has just reported some pretty compelling evidence from a facial recognition company showing that some of the people who breached the Capitol today were not Trump supporters. They were masquerading as Trump supporters and, in fact, were members of the violent terrorist group Antifa."
Here he's amplifying a story that had been discredited from the Washington Times, a right-wing outlet with a long history of distorting the news. The story was so incredibly false it had to be heavily edited after the fact. Of course, after the fact is after it was repeated by a politician in an official hearing. And if we look at Tucker Carlson, we can see an example of something similar.
Millions of Americans sincerely believe the last election was fake. You can dismiss them as crazy. You can call them conspiracy theorists. You can kick them off Twitter. But that won't change their minds. Rather than trying to change their minds, to convince them and reassure them that the system is real, that the democracy works, as you would do if you cared about the country or the people who live here, our new leaders will try to silence them.
Tucker acknowledges the angry mob is right-wing, but he not only presents them as more legitimate to any left-wing demonstrators, but he also justifies the anger felt within the mob. To me, it seems obvious that these people were stirred up by claims that the election was fraudulent or invalid, claims that had been coming from the mouth of the president and his supporters for months. We shouldn't be surprised that people who were repeating these claims are so quick to try and cause confusion around this event. We need to call moments like these what they are. A desperate attempt to rewrite reality in front of our eyes. The invention of conspiracy theories and rationalizations that shift blame away from the harmful rhetoric these people employ. This isn't about presenting the truth. It's about finding a version of events that can be politically capitalized on by the far right so they can seize more power. Whether he knows it or not, Tim is part of this machine. I don't particularly care if he's a cynical grifter or a useful idiot. The point is, he endlessly produces content that attacks the left while excusing the excesses of the right. We can see that pretty clearly from his reaction to the events on January 6th. He's very quick to assign blame for the events to the left, the media, and he offers a rationalization for his role in all of this as well.
Well, let me tell you the difference between me and Jake Tapper. I should say, for the most part, CNN. I have condemned all the violence. All of it. I'm not going to pretend to be a psychic who can see the future. But when I predicted this over and over again, telling you what I'm seeing and what I think will happen, well, then they blame me. They say, it's your fault. My fault? That I warned you and I told you what needed to be done to prevent this? How insane.
I hope the earlier sections of this video help portray a criticism of Tim's content in a way that he doesn't acknowledge. Condemning violence is fine, but it doesn't absolve him from devoting so much of his time to entertaining the delusions of Trump supporters. Whether it's encouraging their fantasies of overturning the election or stoking paranoia about vaccines, Tim Pool's content twists the news of the day into right-wing narratives, letting them live in the world of alternative facts. These Trump supporters have been fed a constant diet of misinformation about the election and misinformation about the world for some time. Tim is constantly hammering on the point that back in June, Chris Cuomo on CNN said that protests don't have to be peaceful, as if this was a major contributing factor in inflaming tensions. But how many Trump supporters are honestly watching CNN? I think they're more likely to be watching Steven Crowder. Or maybe they're listening to politicians like Rudy Giuliani at the very rally they were attending that day say things like this.
Let's have trial by combat.
Or maybe they were listening to Tim, who puts out video after video warning people about an impending civil war. Someone is clearly feeding this audience misinformation and fear. And I don't think it's the cable station that none of them are watching, and I don't think it's any of the politicians they clearly don't support. It's the people in the media like him who are constructing these narratives for them. During his live stream on January 6th, Tim had on a panel of voices largely doing what he always does on his channel, attack the left and the media and play defense for Donald Trump. But during the live stream, YouTube had to censor his chat for frequent incitements to violence.
So what I'm being told is that, for those that are just tuning in, chat has been disabled because people in comments are inciting violence, calling for more, and things like that.
Tim was cognizant enough not to complain too much. Incitements to violence are obviously against YouTube's rules. But is it really surprising to him that so many people in his audience are frothing at the mouth for this? The comments under his videos tell the same story. Tim's content attracts a right-wing audience for a reason. It gives them a vision of a world that validates their feelings. It validates all the rage and fear they feel about the world around them. The American writer Flannery O'Connor had a wonderful quote: "The truth does not change according to our ability to stomach it emotionally." Tim's content isn't about delivering the truth to his audience. It's about giving them stories that let them avoid it. This was a tough video to make. Originally, it was just a quick check-in on the content of Tim Pool to make sure it's still awful, because I thought we were kind of due for that. It got a bit away from me and ballooned into something much bigger, and then the events of January 6th happened, and I needed to add more to it still. Much thanks goes out to Tim Pool Clips, who helped me with the earliest version of this video. He was a great resource. His links are all below in the description box. Also thanks to Timba on Toast. He was very helpful in bouncing some ideas off of. I think he's got some stuff cooking about Tim Pool in the future, so take a look out for that. Thank you so much to all my patrons for being patient. Content has been a little slim on my channel lately, but I'm hoping to turn that around a little bit in the not too distant future. If you'd like to become a patron or a YouTube member, you can do that by going over to my Patreon or clicking the join button below this video. You'll get early access to videos, your name in the credits, and you can download my theme songs. If you'd like to support this channel but rather not do so monetarily, you can leave a comment, hit the like button, or subscribe if you haven't already. You can also ring the bell to be updated of any future videos. Thank you so much for watching.